Hi guys. How you doing? Yeah. I'm Allison Esposito. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called CASH. It's Creative Arkansas Community Hub and Exchange. We're just on the other side of the border in Northwest Arkansas. But we've been working a lot in Tulsa. What we do is sort of serve as an intermediary between governments and funders and artists and work a lot towards the development of place and also the authentic support of artists of all kinds. So I'm lucky to be here moderating this panel today. And first, I just wanted to ask panelists to introduce yourselves, the agencies or organizations that you represent, and how you define placemaking right now.
Okay, I guess I have to go first. So I'm Louisa Krug. I'm the executive director of the Tulsa Global District. We are a new nonprofit program focusing on revitalization of the area at 21st and Garnett in East Tulsa. So if you're familiar with the area, you know it's the most diverse part of the city and there's amazing food and culture there. And so I think the way that I define placemaking would be just creating spaces that can celebrate and highlight that culture that really already exists there, whether it's the food or the dancing or the, performances or things like that.
Hi, my name is Blake Ewing. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Mayor, City of Tulsa. Before that, I worked at OK Pop, which is the state's new pop culture museum. I was the Creative Director and Chief Operating Officer there. Before that, I was City Councilor in Tulsa for about 7 years and an entrepreneur that did owned restaurants and bars and whatnot, mostly in downtown and midtown. My definition of placemaking is creating places that people want to be. It's just that simple. Sometimes we know we want to be in a place, like in the front part of our brain, and sometimes we just feel good in a place, and we don't know why. But placemaking is doing the kinds of things to a built environment that cause us to feel something, feel happy and content in that place.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Brian Kurtz. I am the president of the Downtown Tulsa Partnership. We are the place management organization for downtown, and encompassed within management is a number of things. Placemaking, place enhancement is certainly a part of that. We provide cleaning, maintenance, beautification services around downtown. We are trying to create a vision and a plan for what we want this downtown to be and what purpose it serves for the next month, for the next year, for the next 5 years, for the next decades to come. And place making, I also like to use the term like place enhancement, because the places that we're talking about, whether it's downtown, East Tulsa, City of Tulsa, they have been places. These are places that have been in existence. They have histories that need to be respected, that need to be acknowledged. And our jobs as place makers, place enhancers, is to find that story that Blake and Louisa were just talking about, and give people a reason to be there, give people a reason to understand those histories and to celebrate where we are, what we want it to be moving forward.
Thank you. I'm just going to piggyback on that, Brian, and talk a little bit about how you're each balancing existing cultures, really wonderful creative communities, places that have been around for a very long time. Are you okay? And the making of sort of new energy and new vibes. How are you balancing that? And maybe share a story of something recently in that vein. First, Ryan.
Yeah, it is by no means an easy task in Tulsa. It is by no means an easy task, particularly in downtown. I mean, last year we celebrated as a community, as a city, as a region, the 100-year commemoration of the Tulsa Race Massacre. We have that built into the geography, with the geography of our boundaries of downtown, of historic Greenwood District, Black Wall Street area. And even prior to that, downtown is really the convergence of 4 tribal nations within our entire city. So there are histories and atrocities to be respected upon that as well. We are focused on, as an organization, acknowledging the past, acknowledging the histories that we have in this place, but also finding ways to incorporate those histories as we plan for the future, acknowledging many ways atrocities, the highways that have been built, these huge barriers that exist, trying to tear down and take away these physical barriers, but also the emotional barriers. And our organization is only about a little bit more than a year old. Before that, we were essentially a department within the city of Tulsa. And as we were making a plan to transition ourselves from the city into a standalone nonprofit organization, we did a listening tour all around downtown and really all around downtown. But in order for us to have honest conversations about our downtown's place in the Tulsa Race Massacre, Black Wall Street, those conversations couldn't happen in downtown. So we took those conversations into North Tulsa to really have intentional, heartfelt, oftentimes emotional, gut-wrenching talks about the promises that have been made and what we need to do as an organization and as a community to make sure that we are not breaking promises moving forward, that this is a downtown that we are truly building for all, a place that we want to have as everyone's neighborhood and where everyone feels welcome.
Thank you, Louisa. Do you have something to add?
Yeah. So in East Tulsa, I think there's a lot of, there's so much amazing things happening in East Tulsa already. The food is amazing. You know, there's people hosting events in churches or things like that, but there isn't really like a good place to do it. So I think what I see is like the balance is like not trying to like create anything new, really. That's not our job at the Global District. It's just to give people a place to celebrate their culture that they already want to do, that they're already doing. But then also like making that more open so that people from across the city can come and celebrate that as well. So I think hosting events and things like that have currently given us an opportunity to do that. In the future, I'd love to see more like capital investments that have like a plaza or something where, you know, the Global District as an organization isn't trying to program it every weekend, but that people are just naturally programming it, right? And you just know that if I go there on a Saturday, I'm going to see something really cool, or I'm going to eat something I've never eaten before. So I think an example of that is like 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had a festival, the Festival de Frida, and it was live murals, artists, Latinx artists doing interpretations of Frida Kahlo's work, because we had the amazing exhibition at the Philbrook. But we know that a lot of people from East Tulsa aren't going to go to the Philbrook, right? So we tried to bring it to them. But we had it at Plaza Santa Cecilia. And so we have all these vendors inside. So we didn't even have to do any work to like get the vendors there, right? But we had, 600, 700 people that half of them at least had never been there before, that were now walking around and seeing all these like handmade goods from Mexico or art that you could buy. That they probably had never seen before. So I actually went to one of the events last night at the Mercury Lounge, and someone there said to me, "Oh my gosh, my dad owns a food truck in the parking lot of Plaza Santa Cecilia, and the day that you guys did that festival, his sales were through the roof." So that to me was like, we didn't have to create the place, we just had to do something to bring the people, right? So that was just a really good example to me.
Awesome, thank you. Placemaking, placekeeping, all of it encompasses lots of different tactics, right? We can talk about farmers markets, we can talk about road diets, we can talk about parklets. There's all kinds of mechanisms. Why are you guys all excited about the role of arts and culture in place? And talk a little bit more about which aspects of arts, culture, and creativity you're leaning into.
Thank you for the question. So I believe that artists are the people in our community best equipped to help us understand people not like us. Most of the time when a community is struggling, it's got an empathy problem. And I think Tulsa has had an empathy problem. And so there's this interesting intersect between how we build our physical environments in Tulsa and how that contributes to segregation. And I don't just mean racial segregation, I mean class segregation, or even like taste sensibilities segregation, right? You know what I'm talking about. There's a kind of Tulsan that wants to live in a neighborhood with a cul-de-sac. That is their preference, it's their taste. And a kind that wants to live in a neighborhood where the houses are small and all really close together and they all have porches so they can all see each other walking their dogs. That's their sensibility, that's their taste. We as a community throughout our history, and Tulsa's not alone, but we've built a segregated city so that the people that have this taste are far away from the people with that taste, or the people that look like this never have to see the people that look like that. So in a lot of ways, thinking about how we build this environment has something to do with our empathy culture. And if I can spend my whole life, even in Tulsa, Oklahoma, only really interacting with people who look and think like me, I never have to do the hard human work of contemplating someone else's perspective or somebody else's situation that might be different from mine. A great community is one that cultivates empathy. And it cultivates empathy in two main ways, I think, addressed by your question. One is, how do we celebrate our artists? And how do we give them an opportunity to remind us to look beyond ourselves? And two is, how do we construct a city that creates these interesting collisions of culture and of ideas, challenging us to think beyond ourselves all the time? So if I have a dream for this city, it's that my kids are adults in a place that celebrates our diversity, that looks around for opportunities to be challenged by other cultures, by people who are very different than we are, who owns our past, even the messy parts, and who is committed to letting our artists, or even empowering our artists, to challenge us in ways we could have never imagined. And I am so happy that we are where we are today compared to where we were a decade ago. It's a totally different place. So far to go still, no question, not saying we've arrived. But I think that the people in this room, you're a testament to how we're growing as a community. This is a diverse bunch of people and a bunch of creative people sitting here asking questions and participating in a conversation like this. I think this is the exact kind of thing that moves us forward.
Do either of you guys have anything to add to that wonderful answer?
Well, I think I can say I don't want to keep saying the same exact thing, but like, nothing about the place in East Tulsa is going to draw you there, right? If you spent any time there, like, the parking lots are terrible, the streets aren't great, the buildings, some of them are falling down. I mean, arts and culture is kind of the only thing we have, right? So, I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way, just like, that is the thing that's going to bring people there, right? So it's kind of a natural fit, but then it also is just, I mean, it's you know, like is saying, just like a way to celebrate the diversity and the fact that there are people that live in the city that are different from me, and how do I, celebrate that? And it's through the arts and culture.
I think one of the benefits of downtown is this is a center of arts and culture for our city and our region. I mean, between facilities like the BOK Center, AHA, 108 Contemporary, the Tulsa Arts District in general, the Performing Arts Center, Vanguard, Sound Pony. You can find live music almost any day of the week in downtown, certainly around the city overall. But it's the history, I forgot to say Canes, I'm sorry. But it's a history of these places as well, like the impact of Tulsa, of these places on our country, on the history of music. And these are stories that you are not finding everywhere around this country and everywhere around the world. And that's what makes this community so special. And I'm a transplant here. I've been here for 4 years myself, and I'm still learning and loving every single part of these stories that we're hearing and learning about every day.
Beautiful. I think we're speaking mostly to a room of creative people. And so one question is, how are you presently engaging with creatives, and what is a way that you want to more? And what is one way you might engage with these folks that creates some of that opportunity?
One quick past and then present and opportunities. I think one of my the worst times of my time in Tulsa was June of 2020. Presidential campaign visit coming to town, nobody knowing what the heck was going to happen. Businesses proactively in downtown starting to board up their storefronts, all eyes on us. We had nothing but we had all national news medias coming here. Boarded up storefronts is the picture that our entire country is going to see about downtown Tulsa. And within about 36 hours, our staff working with AHA and a couple of partners, I think we hired 14 or 15 artists to paint boarded up storefronts all throughout downtown, and ideas of hope, inspiration, passion, just to try to portray a different idea. And it was engaging with Tulsans, with artists, and paying them to come out and paint a storefront in a matter of, I think, 24 hours in those cases. And the organic, natural collisions that happened the Sunday after the event that took place at BOK Center, the rally that took place at BOK Center. I had my family down here. We were going around taking pictures of these storefronts, and it was us with hundreds of other people doing the same thing. And it was just like very natural, organic collisions that took place were just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So we've paid artists and we've commissioned artists to paint storefronts. I guess just a couple of months ago, we launched Curbside Haiku that commissioned local artist May Yang to to graphically design what we called an art board, but was essentially a yard sign. And we commissioned and did a call for local poets to create haiku about what they love about downtown, what the favorite places are about downtown. And we selected, I think, 10 or 12 award winners and publicized and pushed those all out in these art boards around the public realm throughout downtown, just as a way to make you smile as you walk down the street and question in a positive way the quality of this sense of place. Where we're currently looking for opportunities to activate vacant storefronts, activate buildings for the holiday season. So whether it's lighting displays, whether it's pop-up retail opportunities, local makers and entrepreneurs, just creative types to bring an added sense of place to downtown over the holiday season. So if you have an interest in that, reach out to us on our website, hello@downtowntulsa.com. We want to find ways to work, and even with creative minds in this building here as well to do some more AR campaigns for downtown.
So for the Global District, the Festival de Frida, we worked with Art House Tulsa, and they were an amazing partner. Actually, I think they're doing one of the displays that's here in Holberton this weekend. But they were an amazing partner at helping finding creatives to do live murals at the event. We had one other event where we did a live mural as well. We had 2 muralists that day. So, I mean, those are like small examples, but they were on like movable, just like plywood. Vinny built these 8x8 frames or whatever. But now the cool thing about that is that now we have them. So they're going to be, the ones from Festival de Frida are going to be displayed at the Gathering Place for a week during Hispanic Heritage Month. I actually think it might be next week. But in the future, we'll have those that we can, if other people are interested in displaying them, that we can do that. So there's ways to see them. Yeah, I got 5 murals for you. It actually keeps me up at night of like, where are those going to go? Because they can't sit in someone's garage forever. So that's like one example of times we've commissioned artists. But I think another thing too is just that like, the more, like we've only had, I think we're planning our 4th event, but people have started to reach out and be like, oh, we want to have a performance at our event. Like, how do we find someone that you had at your event, or how do I get in contact with them? So I think something that I can see as the Global District could be a benefit is just like being that connector, right? So like we have like a list of how to get in contact with these people to potentially get them more exposure or paying gigs or things like that. In places other than the Global District, so that it like spreads it across the city, and that just more opportunities for getting paid to do obviously what you're amazing at doing. And then also I think too, like those murals that are movable, like hopefully we can also display them in the Global District, so that then I think business owners can see like the benefits of something like that, and that then we either, in the future we create some sort of grant program where we can help pay for storefronts to be painted, or that they see the value in paying for that themselves. So I think those are all kind of opportunities that are really just starting, but have kind of huge potential for impact in the area and Tulsa.
Can I add one quick thing to that? And the idea, like, yes, we do want that art in downtown. I think our biggest growth opportunity as an organization is making sure that the art that we are commissioning, the pop-ups that we are commissioning, these place enhancement activities are representative of the entire community itself. That this is, I want to make sure that members of the East Tulsa community feel welcome in downtown and can find art that they enjoy, find music and culture and entertainment that they enjoy as well. And same thing with all of the different nationalities, ethnicities that are here as well. So our task is to make sure that as we are putting out calls for art, as we are putting out calls for whatever it may be, that we are broadening our reach and we're being really intentional about the groups and the individuals that we're targeting for that. So I think that the best thing that can come about from these types of engagements and opportunities is creating those connections with Luis and I are friends outside of just sitting on a panel discussion together.
I babysit his children too.
We also sing karaoke together every once in a while. But I think the best thing that can come about of these types of conversations is broadening our networks and broadening the people that we're engaging with and talking to.
And I'm going to come back to some of that, but like, how are you thinking about the role of creatives in your new role?
Well, I've only been there for like a week. So
You must have all the ideas.
that's a great question. I can tell you how, as a city councilor, I thought about it probably better. At the time that I came into office in 2011, Tulsa looked very different. Kendall Whittier was like a shady strip club, and Ziegler's and the Circle Cinema, and about nothing else. Like, not a lot going on. The Route 66 that we see today looked entirely different. Downtown was very, very different. And so, communities rely on the creative people to take the first step. It's always the creatives who are willing to go into an old crusty building and fix it up, or they can see the potential in things. It is the gift of the creative to see the potential where other people don't. And so a community, in order to reinvent itself for the better, has to rely on the creative people to do what they do best. And that's to imagine something better. Imagine the special place that the Pearl District can be when all it was is a bunch of boarded up buildings. And so the other thing that happens, there's this weird tension, because you see it in cities where creatives will go in and make a thing cool, and then like the less creative people show up after and start doing stupid stuff in the neighborhood. And then people are like, "You're running our cool thing that we just made." And so then the creatives go somewhere else and they make another thing cool. And the tension is that the creative people are always mad that they're being like ran off. That's how they see it, into the next new place. They get run out of downtown. There was a time where downtown, nobody cared except creative people. The creative people came down and started reinventing buildings, putting coffee shops or a bar or whatever in place. And then next thing, there's like a giant apartment building showing up, and everyone's like, like, how dare these people build apartments down here? We made it cool, and now they're capitalizing. It's always a story like that. And Tulsa's not alone. This happens everywhere. But the other side of it is, and you guys are creative people, so creative people complain, but also we really wouldn't have it any other way. Creative people don't want to just make a thing cool and then sit around in the cool thing that they made. I mean, maybe for like 5 seconds, like we're basking in the cool. And then like the creative is always desiring to create and to reinvent and to whatever. So I think when a city, and sometimes the government has a role in this, and I think it'd be great if we did a better job in Tulsa of empowering and equipping visionaries and creative people to do what they do best. I don't begin to know all of those ways, but I think it's important for there to be a partnership in that regard. But in general, I think everything that you love about this city, you owe it to a relatively small group of creative people who were capable of seeing something where other people didn't see anything. And we let them do what they do. And sometimes they don't look like you think they look. And I guess this is the one thing I would add. Sometimes we have an idea about what the artist looks like, and we think the artist like wears funny earrings and has like dresses cool and artsy from the thrift store, and like, right? I always had this idea of like what the artists look like. And in my younger days, like that, I totally was like that. And then I got older and started dressing like less like that. And people were like, "Oh, he's not a creative person. He's a businessman. And he's a politician." I'm like, "Well, wait a second. I still feel like I'm the same creative person that I used to be, but now I just wear different pants." I would say that Elliot Nelson, who most people would not look at him walking down the street, the guy that like created McNally's and all this stuff, and be like, "Oh, that is a creative person." But if you think about what Elliot Nelson created in Tulsa and how much we owe that guy, now he looks like the man now. Like he's like rich white guy with a lot of money and like not an artist. Elliot Nelson is an artist and is a creative person. And I think sometimes we do a thing of like, well, he's not a real artist. No, he is. He invented those things. He ideated those things and brought them to life the exact same way that a filmmaker brings a film to life and that an author brings a book to life, right? I think Tulsa can do better about embracing what creativity looks like in all of its different forms. And that, I think, creates strong community. Sometimes we need the Elliot Nelsons to make the restaurants and the bars that employ the next generation of creative people while they're developing their craft. Please don't tell him that I said anything like that. Oh my God. Talking to you. I don't want this to get back to him.
Elliot Nelson is or knowing how to follow all of that. But
Yeah, he's the guy.
No, it's all good. I think there's a challenge of engagement. Who's at the table to make the decisions around all these things? Yeah, and you guys are all in the middle of figuring this out. That's not unique. Happening all over the country, all over the globe, really. Can you talk a little bit about the dorky word governance and engagement and decision making and how you're thinking about those things or broadening the table to allow for artists of all kinds, whether or not they look like artists, to sit at the table and other community members and how you're thinking about that now or what challenges you're having in formulating some of those groups?
So I think in the global district, when we started the organization, we very intentionally started with people who were really like community members or people working in the community already. So, I mean, that's had its challenges itself too, because I think it helps us with the engagement piece, but it means that we don't necessarily have like a lawyer on the board, which is its own problem, right? But it's helped us like try to be a lot more intentional about like the things that we do to really be focused on the authenticity of the area and really like, we never want to be downtown. We want downtown to be downtown. And we want the global district to be the global district. But I think so I think our board has done a good job of like the type of people that are involved like at the table, and then with engagement, trying to do things like at events. So it's something that's like fun that we've already had people at, and then just, ask them some questions about like, what's the vision or, what is your biggest challenge as a business owner or, as someone who lives here. But I think one of the things that has been a really big struggle for the global district is when we started this organization, it was mostly Latinx individuals at the table. But there's, and a lot of people think about that, the global district, as being really like having, obviously the largest Hispanic Latino community in Tulsa. But that's not the only community that's there, right? There's a diverse Asian community as well, Hmong, Vietnamese. There's not as many Burmese individuals living in that part of Tulsa, but there's a growing Burmese community in Tulsa. And so I think the global district relates to them as well. So that's something that's like kind of the like second wave of the thing that we know has been a challenge and that we're really trying to start to address now. So we've really started with like just trying to develop relationships with kind of key people in those communities. And then obviously building on their own relationships. So, I mean, maybe next year I'll come back and tell you the next group that we're struggling to engage with, and we've figured this one out, but I'm sure it'll be a long uphill battle. But I do think that like the types of people that we've gotten in the decision-making roles in the global district are people that is like forefront at their, of their goals for the organization. And so, always open to feedback on that of like things that we're not doing that well, so that we can improve that. Cause it's obviously a kind of a continuous improvement. And I think one project we're trying to start, either later this year or early next year is just having like monthly kind of like community dinners. So that we can have just opportunities that aren't like those big events where we're trying to get people from all across Tulsa, but like 50, 100 people that live right in the area come and like have tacos together, have pho together, and just like talk to us about the global district, their own experiences. So I think things like that will help kind of start to just continue to build that trust in those relationships.
For us, it's been engagement, broadening who is at the table, making that table bigger and wider, has been a part of this evolution of our role at the city of Tulsa to the standalone organization really from day one. But it's not an easy thing. When you look at property ownership in downtown, you're hard pressed to find minority ownership when you look at the 2 square miles of our geographic area. Up until I think it was maybe 3 or 6 months ago, you couldn't find a female owner, like a single female owner of a building in downtown until Libby Billings bought the building that Elote has been in for the last decade plus. So it makes it difficult from a governance perspective to really broaden who is representing property owners, because we are a property owner-based tax assessing organization. But we find other opportunities, whether it's just making that table bigger, like I said, and making sure that our bylaws are encouraging diversity across ethnicity, race, gender, just the very, very basic cores of things, and sexual orientation is a part of that. But making sure that we also have small businesses at the table, locally owned entrepreneurs at the table, the name partnership, the word partnership that is in our name as an organization is intentional, because we cannot do this work alone. We went from a staff of 2 to 6 as between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and 6 people trying to do this work as a part of this 2 square mile area of downtown is still not nearly enough. But we rely on partnerships with other organizations, with the city of Tulsa, with arts groups, with philanthropic organizations to make our work and to make our work possible, to make downtown successful. And we're going through this. We are leading a reimagining of the center of the universe right now. That great, used to be great public plaza, pedestrian connector between the arts district and the rest of downtown. And we want to make sure that this public space, this idea of place enhancement of a physical space itself, is imagined in the way that Tulsa wants it to be, not just the way that Brian, the president of the organization, or the board of this organization wants it to look like, or the way that it functions. So we've been very actively having conversations with people out in public. We are working with designers to make sure that it's reflective of the histories of the different voices that have been around this so far. And it's going to be an evolution. It's just something that we need to keep at the forefront of everything that we are doing moving forward, whether it's programming based, whether it's physical capital project based. It's a difficult but important component of our work.
Yeah, it is difficult work, and I really appreciate your honesty about that. I feel as an outsider to Tulsa, as a visitor, frequent visitor, immediately that I can feel the sense of place that's here, places that are here. And I guess one of the last questions I want to have for you, and then we'll open it up to this crew, is just what are your inspirations? What are a couple of places or examples of spots that you visited, maybe outside of Tulsa, where because of arts and culture, you feel this incredible sense of place, and it's somewhere that inspires you in the work that you're doing now?
I want to go last on this. I'm trying to think.
Stumping you at the end of a Friday. Place. Can be either.
So a place that I think is inspiring to me. My sister lives in a place called Antigua, Guatemala, and it is a kind of a Spanish preserved community about an hour away from Guatemala City. And the streets are all cobblestone. The sidewalks are about 20 inches wide, and all of the buildings are these kind of stucco-faced buildings. Nothing has been changed in centuries. So no new construction came in and bulldozed one of those old things and built a new thing. Guatemala City is surprisingly super modern in terms of its architecture, and it's kind of a progressive. Central America is more grandiose than we are for the most part in the U.S. in terms of its new and modern architecture. But you go to Antigua, and it's this tiny little community, big tourism destination. There are cathedral ruins all over the place. At one point, they had a cathedral for every saint in Antigua. So it has been wiped out by volcanoes multiple times. And so there's only a few of those left, but they are absolutely mind-blowing. It's got the traditional Spanish architecture with the town square in the middle with the fountain and the whole thing. And everybody is outside in that plaza, and like you talked about, creates this amazing energy in the middle of that community. But what I love about it, like I said before, I think it cultivates empathy. You can't not see people in close proximity because of the way that it's built. Walking down a 20-inch wide sidewalk is quite the thing when you have to make eye contact with the person walking towards you and do that like few second human negotiation of like who's going to step off into the street so that the other person can pass. These are interactions that you cannot avoid in that city. And so that, I think, it helps that empathy bit. You're surrounded by other people from all over the world. It's a international tourist destination. So you see all these people not like you experiencing the same thing at the same time. It also cultivates curiosity, which I think is the second virtue of a great community and of a healthy community. You don't know what's around any corner because of the way that the city's built. You should look it up. You have no idea what's around the corner. It all looks like you're in some kind of a maze. You see the walls of the building across the street and the walls you're walking next to, and you don't know what you get to. And there's all these amazing little cafes and like wonderful serendipitous things that you find looking around. This community, this is a long answer, I'm sorry, inspires curiosity and empathy better than any place I could imagine. It's also pretty great to look up at active volcanoes like smoking up into the air. And all of the hillsides in those volcanoes are coffee plantations. And so you get the greatest coffee in the world and really cool people and amazing culture and wonderful food. It's hard to beat it. Beat that.
So Blake is talking about the built environment and the cultural environment and the central location and coffee. What do you got?
Okay, so I should have gone first because that one's going to be tough. Okay, so this actually is not a place that necessarily inspires me for the Global District specifically, but I was born in Baltimore and all of my family still lives there, and they all live in this very cute little neighborhood called Locust Point. And I was just there a couple weeks ago, and actually my roommate went with me, and she's heard me talk about Locust Point for 10 years or something, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't get it until I came, and you're everything you've said makes sense now." And it's classic Baltimore row homes. Nothing even that special about them, but there's just something about exactly like what you're saying. There's just, you walk down the street and a row home's been turned into a restaurant. And instead of it being like this huge restaurant where everyone's worried about where they're going to park, it's like 3 floors of a restaurant because it used to be someone's house. And exactly like you were saying, everyone's out walking around and people actually seem to know your neighbors. And in Baltimore, stoop sitting is a thing because you don't really have a porch, but you have the stairs that lead into your row house. Everyone's out sitting on their stoop. And every time I'm there, I just feel like, oh, this is a place I want to live. Every time I go there, I think, my sister and I always say, every time we're there, we look on Zillow because we're like, are we going to buy a house this time? And I love Tulsa, but there's just something about that space that just makes me feel like this is what I want a neighborhood to be like.
Okay, so we're adding preservation of original structures, walkability.
Yes to all of those things. And I gain inspiration from every single place that I visit, whether it's in this country, abroad. I love being in urban centers. I love the built environment and the history, the preservation of all of those things. But whether it's a city like New Orleans or in culture that's just emitted from every single square inch of that space to the history of our country in a place like Boston and evolution of a place like New York City. But what I really gain inspiration from, and this is, there's a part of me that feels like we shouldn't have jobs in a way. We shouldn't have we shouldn't have these jobs. We shouldn't need to have these jobs because whether it's a place like the Strip District in Pittsburgh that has these very narrow sidewalks that vendors are just taking them up naturally, organically every single day and every single weekend, European piazzas, you just have vendors rolling out. There's no structure to that whatsoever. Dali in China, I visited my college friend there a couple of years ago. Just go out to these awesome places, and whether it's food vendors or just buying tchotchkes, there's no structure around that. You don't have a liaison like Louisa or myself that are kind of wrangling the legal implications or the city permitting implications for all of these things. That shouldn't have to happen, and it sucks that it does. And I love my job, and I still will do it every single day. But there's that very natural, organic component to those public spaces. It feels magical. It really feels magical.
Love it. I'm going to open this up to all of you. Does anyone have questions for any of our panelists? And I'm just going to ask you to yell so we don't have to throw microphones across the thing, if that's okay.
Okay. First of all, I'm really glad to hear about the initiative that you guys are making. I think it's extremely important. And I want to speak about it's kind of a question aimed at all of y'all. So I've been at the local flea market for the past month or so. I'm a vendor there, and I actually went down to the city. I got my permit. I got all the qualifications required. And so I've been there for a couple months now. And during the time I was there was an issue, as you said, with the city ordinance. And so there were a lot of vendors out there who were just regular people, come up, set up a table, and they're trying to peddle their wares and whatever. They were actually shut down. It's on Admiral, the flea market there. That lady, she's a very nice older lady, and the city's been really hard on her. And since then, there's actually been a very, very strong decrease in business since these activities has taking place. I'm actually no longer a vendor there, but I say that to segue into this. As a resident of Tulsa, of North Tulsa, I've been I'm a witness and a participant, if you will, in this culture or lack of culture situation. And one of the things I can see is, as I look at these kind of initiatives, I see it more of, the establishment, if you will, doing what they can to try to promote culture, to try to promote this individuality. But I think that's kind of in direct contrast to my early example of, individuals just wanting to come up, set up and do their own thing, being shut down. And so what I see is it's a matter of kind of the establishment kind of relinquishing some power, if you will. Either that or maybe being a little more lenient. I don't want to say, break any laws, I recognize the importance of it. But what I want to aim at you all was to ask, what is the standpoint of, our local our local government and just allowing individuals to be creative and express themselves as their because honestly I feel like you can't have both. One kind of stops the other because essentially if you want somebody to be free, express themselves, it's kind of hard to do that and put restrictions in it. Most of the really creative people just won't get involved. So there's that organic element there that kind of has to go up against the established order. And I just wanted to know, do y'all think that that's an issue? Do y'all think that's something that that the political, I don't want to use the word government, but do you think that the government could kind of in the future maybe be a little more sympathetic to that? Or is this just something that, set in stone is going to have to go under the existing framework?
I'll do my best. What's your name?
My name's Monty.
Monty?
Monty Williams, yes, sir.
All right. Great comments. So having worked in the government, I work in the government now. I work for the city. I'll tell you this, and if this is a secret, I'm about to tell you guys a secret. Government is terrible at nuance. Just, right? Not the strong suit of City Hall is to think about nuance. We have to make laws, ordinances for the orderly function of the city. And so when those happen, for the most part, your city councilors are doing that work and they're thinking about how those ordinances affect the people that they represent. They're doing their best to contemplate all of those diverse perspectives when those ordinances come into play. And the structure is set up so that you have a representative operating on your behalf in that regard. But there's absolutely no way that those city councilors, and I was one, will always get it right, or will always factor in every situation, or will be able to function within that nuance. I think we all want to believe that our community is orderly and safe and all of those things, right? That's the government's job. But we don't want the government or any kind of bureaucracy getting in the way of creative expression or those kinds of things. I hear, I think, the broad statement that you're saying, and I think we can always do better. I didn't get to say this earlier, and I should have. When we were talking about how to have a seat at the table, I'm convinced that Tulsa Creative Engine has an opportunity, especially as it grows in time and experience and in number, to say our organization doesn't just create spaces for creative people to express themselves, doesn't just give a voice to maybe someone who was voiceless, doesn't just organize events like this to bring people together, but we also have an opportunity to help these artists have a voice within their community. I hope Chris doesn't hold me to this. I just turned TCE into a lobbying organization. But I believe that artists should be on city boards, authorities, and commissions. The city could be intentional about making sure that an artist is sitting at the table. In a meeting today, we're out of time. I'm going to finish this because I think it ties in. The city got noticed that we needed to pay music licensing rights for super wonky Parks and Rec stuff. But Zumba classes at park facilities, like at a community center, are playing music. And so because of that, somebody has the license rights to that music, and the city has to pay ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC for the rights to play Lady Gaga at the community center, right? And so the city attorney was notifying us that the Parks Department needed to pay for the ability to perform music in public places. And this is across the board. And this isn't for Lady Gaga as much as it's whoever wrote that song. It's paid by these things being paid. So sorry. So we had this conversation about whether or not we were going to get in legal trouble about it. And then the conversation went to, what's the right thing to do? And I said at the table, it doesn't matter about the legality. The question is, what's the right thing to do? And to do right by artists who created that music. They deserve to get paid. And furthermore, on TGov, our government access channel, which plays licensed music sometimes on TGov, we have to pay for that. I said, this is an opportunity for us to pay local artists directly for the right to their song, to use that on government access TV. Instead of whatever stock music we pulled off the internet, why not play Tulsa artists as the music bed on government access TV? Like those kind of things. That's one dorky creative person sitting at the table advocating for that thing. And it got me, it's crazy that we're all having this conversation. It's got me thinking right then, there should be creative people advocating for artists' interests in every one of these boards, authorities, and commissions that we have. We probably got 50 of them at the city. And I think TCE has an opportunity to make that petition and make that call to the mayor's office. They know someone in the mayor's office to talk to about it. But I think it would be a great thing for this group of people to advocate, give us a seat at the table, and help us to express ourselves in lots of different ways without getting in the way.
And I think that's a mic drop. Thank you guys for being here.